As I'm sure you all know by now, for almost all champions in League of Legends, their strongest or most impactful ability in their arsenal is their ultimate, unlocked at level 6 and further upgraded at levels 11 and 16. The ultimate is usually what defines their identity, their purpose in the game. Second only to summoner spells, this ability's cooldown is tracked the most, as a champion's pressure greatly decreases if their ultimate is on cooldown. In the past, I've brought up the concept of super ultimates, which are abilities where the threat of it being used may be just as, if not more influential than the actual ability usage itself, such as Fiddlesticks. Crowstorm takes 1.5 seconds to channel, but upon completion, it blinks to a target location with a massive damage aura that can easily do well over 2,000 to 3,000 damage to every single person caught in it. The sheer potential kill power and risk of getting blindsided can have many teams tread far more cautiously than if Fiddlesticks wasn't in the game, and this trait is shared by many champions across all existing classes. A subcategory of super ultimates features a small but relevant group of champions who carry ultimates that are not necessarily threatening in terms of damage, rather their power stems from their accessibility. Today we're going to be discussing global ultimates and how they're a literal representation of the importance of pressure and macro in League of Legends. But before we get started, I want to give a quick shout out to today's sponsor, FaceCheck, another Overwolf app. As you guys know, I'm a big fan of Overwolf, I use it a lot myself, and this is one of the better ones they have. Unlike other apps that focus only on one section, FaceCheck is present during Champ Select, in-game, and post-game. In Champ Select, it shows you a list of stats, such as picks and bans, team stats, and even lets you see runes and item builds for the champion you're gonna pick. While in-game, you get a detailed rundown of every player on both teams, what rank they are, what their builds were last game, and whether they're autofilled, which, let's face it, every jungler is autofilled nowadays, along with other stats including damage spreads. So if you're up against a team that you're not sure if you need to focus on magic resist over armor, it will tell you how much physical, magic, and true damage you can expect from the enemy team. Finally, after the game is done, FaceCheck has a post-game analysis detailing your personal performance in comparison to your lane opponent and more, so you can see what you need to improve on. It's a really cool app that covers all of your bases, give or take, and if you're interested in using this to help yourself out in your games, I suggest you head on over to the link on screen or click it in the video description down below. It would support the channel a whole bunch and benefit you as well. Thanks again to FaceCheck for sponsoring the video. Every ability that isn't a self-activated buff has a target range of some sort, meaning they can be used anywhere or on anyone within its effect radius. The most common way to demonstrate this would be through a champion's attack range. Most melee champions have an attack radius between 125 and 175, while ranged champions all hang around 500 to 600. A global ability, which can be a regular ability or an ultimate, is a spell with an extended or limitless range, meaning it can travel very far or even indefinitely. Champions with global abilities can impact areas of the map despite not being physically present at that location, of which they're divided into two types, global attacks and teleports. Global attacks are what comes to mind when a lot of people think of global ultimates, most notably due to the wide number of marksmen who possess one. Ashe, Ezreal, Draven, Jinx, and Senna's respective ultimates fire a massive projectile that travels in a straight line at varying speeds, each having their own unique properties. Enchanted Crystal Arrow shatters upon hitting an enemy champion and deals magic damage to all enemies caught in the blast while stunning the initial target for up to 3.5 seconds based on how far the arrow traveled, the longest duration of hard crowd control possible from a single ability. Dawning Shadow does damage to all enemy champions within the center wave and shields all allies within the broader wave, so it's both an offensive and defensive ability. True Shot Barrage, Whirling Death, and Super Mega Death Rocket don't have any supplementary effects other than the damage they deal. Where they differ is how that damage is dealt. Ezreal's ultimate is a piercing skill shot like Senna's, so it will damage all targets in its path. Draven's ult functions like a boomerang attack that damages targets on the way out and on the way back. Jinx Rocket is a finisher, dealing bonus damage equal to the target's missing health. There are some global attacks that don't fire a single projectile though, Gangplank's Cannon Barrage and Karthus' Requiem. Cannon Barrage locks onto an area of the player's choosing, upon which several clusters of ordnance will strike in a large radius. Requiem is the only auto-enemy targeting global ultimate in the game. After a long channel, Karthus simultaneously deals a burst of magic damage to all enemy champions currently alive. Soraka's Wish doesn't deal damage to enemies, but it cleanses grievous wounds and heals all of her live teammates. It's pretty much Karthus' ultimate, but instead of damaging opponents, it heals allies. However applied, the trait among all of them is their means of engaging in combat remotely. For example, if Gangplank is chilling up in top lane and his bot lane is getting tower dove, he can cast his ultimate as a means of cover fire or to help turn the fight around without actually having to teleport bot. For some champions though, they have what is called a global teleport, an ability that lets them instantly traverse long distances around the map, usually accompanied by a supplementary effect. Global teleports are considered more dangerous than global attacks since, while very impactful, are just one attack at the end of the day. If you dodge it, then you're fine, whereas trying to deal with a full-on champion with multiple abilities and whatnot might cause more trouble. Twisted Fate, Shen, Nocturne, Pantheon, Galio, and Talia are the 6 champions in League with the global teleport. Well, I suppose if we follow the definition of traversing long distances, we can include Scion and Kled, even though theirs are far more restrictive. Twisted Fate's Destiny and Gate not only allow him to teleport to any spot within range, but grants true sight of all enemies. Stand United grants any one teammate a massive shield, while Shen channels for a couple of seconds before teleporting right next to them. Talia summons a massive wall of earth that she can choose to surf on and jump off at any time. Okay, I'm getting tired of explaining each individual ability, so I'm just gonna assume you know what Galio, Pantheon, Scion, Kled, and Nocturne do, because we're like 3 pages in, and I still need to get to the main point of the video. Keep in mind that an ability doesn't need to have literally infinite range to be considered global. Nocturne's Paranoia at rank 1 barely goes from one top or bot lane outer turret to the other, yet people consider it a semi-global ability. As a general rule of thumb I like to follow, if the champion is able to contribute some form of pressure to an area at least 2,000 units away from them, that would be the cutoff point between a normal ability and a global or semi-global one. In other words, Urgot, Ornn, Jhin, Vex, Caitlyn, Xerath, no one considers them to be global ultimates, but they cover a distance large enough insofar as requiring you to be aware of the fact that you're still in danger even if they're not physically present on your screen. Of course, the title of the video says Global Ultimate, but there are non-ultimate abilities with global or semi-global range too, such as Warwick's Bloodhunt, Swain's Vision of the Empire, or Ashe's Hawkshot. Much like Super Ultimates, global ults have their own range of pros and cons. For a game that places a heavy focus on a champion's range and mobility, they may appear at first to give an unfair advantage. If you go through the various classes, a weakness listed for the likes of Juggernauts, Mages, and Tanks would be their poor range, slow tempo, or some combination of the sort. In that sense, the greatest benefit of having a global ultimate would be a reduced commitment to being at certain spots on the map, which may sound ironic for teleport-based abilities, but let me explain. For global attacks, you obviously are able to assist your team without having to be there yourself. I mentioned Gangplank's Cannon Barrage earlier, but if you're playing Soraka and minding your own business down in bot lane only for your top jungle and mid to engage the enemy top jungle and mid, you can still maintain your current position while pressing Wish to juice them up a bit. As for global teleports like Pantheon and Galio, you do give up your priority from whatever lane you're in, but you instantly transfer that priority to another lane, top or bot lane for instance. Most other champions would have to sacrifice their presence for a good 5 to 10 seconds just to walk from one lane to another. Even if you gain nothing from ulting to help your teammates, you save a lot more time than if you were manually walking. And of course, if you take teleport, you can ult to roam, then teleport straight back to lane and continue right where you left off. Twisted Fate is seen very frequently in pro play despite his pretty outdated kit, purely because he doesn't need to dedicate himself to split pushing at the expense of his team. He can shove a few waves bot lane then instantly teleport to Baron, a privilege that the opposing team likely won't have. So if they want to stop him from taking towers, they'll have to commit far more resources to send someone to match him, unless they have teleport or something. In fact, that's why Ezreal's True Shot Barrage got nerfed to deal half damage to minions. With a single press of a button, he used to easily wipe out entire waves, which would either slow down the opponent's side lane momentum or set up a slow push in their favor, all without having to physically go to lane to shove that wave. Global ultimates are not without trade-offs though. While you're given far more liberal access to the map, it lowers your effectiveness in head-on confrontations. This is more noticeable in teleports than attacks, but it still applies to the latter group to some extent. Two of their biggest weaknesses is either their long cast time or their worse efficacy at close range. The 5 global projectiles all have casting animations ranging from a quarter second to even 3/4 of a second, long enough to where most champions can sidestep them. Enchanted Crystal Arrow does come out immediately, but the stun duration won't last very long if used point blank. Kled and Scion's parameters are also contingent on how far they travel, so they're nowhere near as threatening in close quarters. Ultimates like Karthus' Requiem can't safely be used in close proximity to an enemy champion, because leaving yourself wide open for 3 seconds is extremely risky, especially since you can't cancel his channel the way you can Malzahar's ultimate for instance. Teleports naturally are worthless in your immediate range too. One of the biggest weaknesses of Shen, Twisted Fate, Pantheon, Talia, and such is that they don't get a combat ultimate, which effectively means they don't have a level 6 power spike against their lane opponent. Fortunately, their basic abilities are strong enough to offset that most of the time, but it is significant enough to be exploited. Now, one may argue that Soraka, Nocturne, and Gangplank can escape either weakness as their ultimates are instantly activated and have the same strength whether used against their opponents right in front of them or to assist allies somewhere else. But that in and of itself comes with a cost. For example, what makes Nocturne's Paranoia so scary? Get it? Scary cause paranoia? That was bad. What makes Nocturne's Paranoia so scary is not the targeted dash attack, but the blackout he inflicts on all his opponents, so they can't see what is going on unless they're right next to each other. The damage itself is not all that great though. At rank 1, it's 150 base plus 120% bonus AD. For comparison, another single target nuke would be Garen's Demacian Justice, dealing 150 base plus 25% of the target's missing health as true damage. It's a far deadlier attack in almost every way. Soraka's Wish heals only up to 195 plus 82.5% ability power at rank 1. That's barely enough health to protect you against maybe like 2 auto attacks at most. Global ultimates universally have an implicit minimum range of effect as a result of this. They're all designed to support your teammates elsewhere, being either worthless or much less effective when used against an opponent standing right in front of you. I'd say it's a pretty decent trade-off. You would think global ultimates would be some of the most broken abilities in the game, but Riot surprisingly did a good job at balancing them. One of the things I really appreciate about global ultimates is that, like I mentioned at the very beginning, they serve as a reminder of just how important pressure and macro is in League of Legends. You have champions with, let's face it, pretty brainless kids like Twisted Fate, Ashe, and Soraka, but their global ultimates allow them to exert a lot of pressure on the map because they can do things that almost no one else can. You could be the most cracked Sigma Riven one-trick the world has ever seen and get top-gapped by a Shen who ults its AD carry right before they explode, which turns a bad tower dive bot into an easy 3 for 0 and a dragon. If someone on the enemy team has a global ultimate, you basically have to spend the entire game aware of the fact that a 2v2 or 3v3 might actually be a 2v3 or 3v4 if the enemy Pantheon is missing. As the mid or ADC, you have to constantly be on the lookout for a random Ashe ult stunning you from 3 screens away. When looking for picks, you have to account for the possibility of getting baited into a Galio or Shen ultimate. If you escaped a teamfight with your life hanging by a thread, you better turn on those scripts because Xerath or Jhin will snipe you down. Both teams' entire macro strategies change with global ultimates, which are inherently macro-oriented spells, and gives way to new opponents and plays that would otherwise be impossible to pull off. It not only gives your team the added confidence in taking more risks or going for more aggressive plays, but can conversely act as a layer of psychological deterrence. The enemy team may not be too keen on making plays when there's a Twisted Fate on your team. That just goes to show you how important range and tempo is in this game. Not to say that champions with global ultimates are instant wins, but you have to play the match in an entirely different way, and when used to their fullest potential, no amount of mechanical skill can match that. In an era where League has all these super flashy and explosive champions who seem like they can just punch their way out of any bad situation, it's refreshing to see just how much global ultimates drive home the importance of pressure. Sure, you can probably 1v9 games much harder with Kai'Sa or Yone than Ashe or Twisted Fate, but there's a certain sense of comfort in having that added layer of macro presence because it presents an additional win condition. One of the things I've been vocal about is how it feels like the only way you can win in League 9 times out of 10 is to engage your opponent head on, regardless of if you can afford to or not. Sometimes your team may not be structured around skirmishes or team fights, maybe you're better for picks or 1-3-1. Someone I haven't talked about yet who demonstrates this the best would be Bard. Say what you want about him, Tempered Fate is one of the best designed abilities in the game. There is no limit to the amount of things it can be used for, and AoE stasis that works on both allies and enemies means you can use it to engage, to disengage, to lock down enemy targets, to set up for combo plays, to save your allies from certain death, to stall for time while you wait for help to arrive, to zone off enemies, to screw over divers and assassins. Tempered Fate is even a middle finger to Shelly because you can stasis the tower right before she rams into it. Not many people consider Bard's ultimate to be an overpowered ability, despite having more potential value in one spell than overloaded champions have in their entire kit. Because it's a macro ability. Just recently, you guys saw my video on why no one plays Rek'Sai, and I talked about how Void Rush converting from a global teleport into a single target finisher severely reduced her versatility even if she now has higher kill power. She was the only jungler in the game with a global teleport before Talia came out. That, combined with her Tremor Sense and Tunnel system, made her the macro jungler, which is why she was pretty much picked ban in pro play despite having a very simple kit. In League of Legends, the champion is the X factor. Assuming both teams are of equal skill and have relatively equal strength in 5v5 teamfights, being down one member, heck, even one attack, puts you at a monumental disadvantage, and global ultimates prove that. How many of you guys remember SKT vs Rox Tigers in Worlds 2016? A single Ashe arrow, one single Ashe arrow, was enough to essentially doom all hopes of SKT winning that game. I mean, in the end they won the entire series, but that moment right there is a testament to how important pressure is in this game. If Duke was able to complete that teleport, SKT would have been able to stop Rox from backdooring their base, no question. But since they delayed him from getting back to base for a good 10 seconds or so, that bought them just enough time for Smeb to teleport in, dispatch Wolf quickly so they can 4v2 blank and Duke. Anyways, bottom line is, global ultimates as a concept are amazing abilities because they add more complexity to League of Legends without overloading champions or power creeping the game. With that said, I still think Karthus and Soraka's ultimates are pretty badly designed since they just press a button, question mark, and then profit. but by being global abilities, their macro pressure can make for a lot of game-changing moments. If you enjoyed the video, a rating would be much appreciated. Subscribe to the channel to watch more content like this. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter and join my Discord server, and if you haven't yet, check out my other discussion videos after this one. Until next time though, thank you all so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care.